Players Union today put out a statement about how players have been complaining about the fines and how frequent they've been this year. Does it feel like the NFL's been tougher on you guys than in previous years?
I have no comment about that. I'm not trying to get fined anymore, so they're doing a pretty good job from my perspective. Yes, I've tried to appeal. Tried is the key word. Yeah.
Because they released the thing saying how many.
Yeah, I got all of them back. They did not get appealed. Hence why I'm saying they're doing a pretty good job.
DK Metcalf wisely not trying to get fined anymore.
Listen, we're all here so we don't get fined.
That's right. DK
Just
Metcalf wisely avoiding that situation.
Yes, exactly.
And DK Metcalf headlines the love list for pass catchers. He's got your Commanders this week, Barry. Looking good for DK Metcalf, Mr. Wide Receiver 10 going into the week.
Yeah, here's something you could tweet if you want to on Sunday. TYDK, thank you DK, for the sweet, sweet fantasy points. Look, the fact
content
is,
plan.
Yeah, there you go.
I missed the Josie
take
content.
notes, social
Josie
media.
content was way better than that.
They're not on Winders. I was up all night writing my column. Look, the fact is that my Commanders are bad. They're not so good. They're stinky. They've allowed the second most touchdowns to wide receivers this season. They've allowed the most yards on deep passes. Metcalf, obviously, top 10 in average depth of target. They like to take deep shots. This game is at home. I have to believe positive touchdown regression is coming for DK Metcalf. He leads the NFL with 11 end zone targets, but has converted only 2 of them. That changes on Sunday. I think he gets into the end zone. I think he's a top 10 play. He comes in at my wide receiver 10, and he is, in fact, on the love list. He is here, so he doesn't get fined.
So, Matthew, on Fantasy Football pregame on Sunday on Proper Shot, I took DK Metcalf over 54.5 receiving yards, and I wasn't paying that much attention to the Seattle-Baltimore game after it got out of hand, but I saw that DK had a 50-yard reception in the second quarter. I was like, all right, tick, it's home. He went under. That was his only reception for the game. He went 1 for 50. It's such a bizarre line. He had 4 targets, but I agree.
That was a bad beat.
Yeah, that was a strange one to lose. But anyway, Commanders' 4th worst pass defense by efficiency, so I think DK will get right.
Jay, how about Michael Pittman coming in for Barry as wide receiver 12, and simply with Gardner Minshew, Pittman gets a ton of volume in this offense. And he's got the Patriots who've run out of corners week after week.
Yep. I think the main thing to look at when you're studying props or which players to use is simply if there are massive disparities between how good a team is defending the run and defending the pass. Now, the Patriots are excellent defending the run and terrible defending the pass. And that's why Sam Howell threw for a bunch of yards against them, why Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson both went over. I think this is the same recipe. I think it's going to be Gardner Minshew throwing, and I think Michael Pittman should have a big game.
All right. Calvin Ridley also on the list. He's got the 49ers. He comes in as wide receiver 20. But Barry, for Calvin Ridley, he's got at least 8 targets in 3 of his past 4 games.
Yeah, and by the way, the Niners, we've talked about this going into the bye, their defense has struggled. They, in fact, have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. They've also allowed the 2nd most receptions to perimeter wide receivers this season, which is obviously where Ridley lines up the majority of the time, as Christian Kirk is their slot guy. So in a game in which we like the Niners offense to bounce back with the return of Debo, the return of Trent Williams we're hoping for, we think they're going to have to throw to keep up with the Niners. Calvin Ridley is a top 20 play for me this week.
Our last one here, Dalton Schultz. Listen, Jay, the last 4 weeks for Dalton Schultz, he's been one of the better tight ends in fantasy as this Texans offense goes. He's got the Bengals this week, and the Bengals, much like the Eagles in a similar way, good team, but they struggle against opposing tight ends.
Yep, they do. And if you recall, Connor, I believe in round 14 of our show league draft, Matthew laughed me out of the room for drafting Dalton Kincaid well against the Bucs, 10 for 130 and a tutty. How do you like me now, Matthew? Unfortunately, I cut Dalton Kincaid after week 3, so I wasn't there to reap the benefits.
So I like you quite a bit, actually, to be perfectly honest
but
with you.
I do think that he's going to be part of this offense going forward. The fact that he can put up that production from the tight end position. Now, it's very uneven for Dalton Kincaid. The week before that, he went 2 catches for 5 yards against the Panthers, which isn't ideal. But Stroud does seem to be developing a rapport with him, goes to him on that key 4th and goal there. So I think Dalton Kincaid in a favorable matchup is starter viable.
And Dalton Schultz.
Sorry, Dalton Schultz.
That's okay.
Too many Daltons at tight end.
Yeah.
They get rid of one of them.
A very Dalton-heavy tight end field in fantasy. Some others receiving votes. Hollywood Brown, thanks to the return of Kyler Murray, Tank Dell. I heard Tank Dell's going to be a thing this year, Matthew. Drake
He already
London.
is.
Jahan Dotson back and looking good, finally involved in this offense. Jake Ferguson has had a really good stretch here with the Cowboys offense, and shocking at a big game against the Eagles. Finally, Taysom Hill. He's just not going away.
Yeah, he really isn't. Like, over the last 4 weeks, he's the second best tight end in fantasy. He's had 3 straight games with double-digit opportunities, rushes, and targets. In a world in which most tight ends are touchdown dependent, why wouldn't you trust a guy that has multiple ways to score a touchdown, not just catching, but obviously they use him as a red zone threat. He sometimes will throw the ball as well. I will say Ferguson, when these teams played, when the Giants and the Cowboys played, he had a 28% target share. I like him a bunch as a top 10 play this week. Look, a couple of ones that have a caveat a little bit. I'm assuming Drake London plays. You never know. But if he plays, I do like him with Heineke against a Cardinals team that allows the 3rd highest catch rate to wide receivers. And Jahan Dotson, again, Curtis Samuel returned to practice in a limited fashion. Dotson's production, as we talked about yesterday, has come the last couple of weeks. I still think he'll do well against Seattle, which has allowed the 2nd highest catch rate to the slot, and Dotson's played some slot even when Samuel's been out there. But certainly I would lower expectations for Dotson if Samuel is a full go on Sunday. We'll wait to see how that happens. You mentioned Tank Dell, 89% route participation the last 2 weeks since he returned as well. And Hollywood Brown, we talked about him. With the return of Kyler Murray, this is something he should be targeted off, and he's gotten almost a 30% target share in the Cardinals offense this year. When Kyler Murray was his quarterback last year, he averaged over 17 fantasy points per game. Falcons give the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers over the last month.
Yep, Jake Ferguson's the interesting one to me. He's had 15 and 22 fantasy points the past 2 games. Dak missed him as well a couple of times. Seems like they have a really good rapport. I don't know how this has happened, but the Dallas offense seems to be CeeDee Lamb or Jake Ferguson. These other guys, Gallup, Cooks, even Tony Pollard to an extent, they just seem to be marginalized.
And it's working. That's what's even kind of crazier for the Dallas offense right now. Let's move over to the hate list, starting with a former Cowboy, Amari Cooper. He's got...
That was a professional transition.
That's right. That's an Emmy-nominated transition. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Not an Emmy-winning transition. Not an Emmy-nominated.
Emmy-nominated. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Amari Cooper...
Todd Zeal has transitions like that in his sleep.
Amari Cooper, wide receiver 29. We talked about it, guys. The Ravens, not only one of our favorite maybe Super Bowl odds right now, but it's also because how good their defense has been this season.
They've been fantastic. In the last 7 games, 2. Count them 2. You can count them with 2 fingers. How many touchdowns the Ravens have allowed to opposing wide receivers? 2 touchdowns in their past 7 games. In fact, over that stretch since week 4, Baltimore allows the 2nd fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, and only 2 wide receivers have had more than 63 yards against Baltimore. You feel good about the fact that he does get a big target share and Watson's playing and not P.J. Walker, but still hard for me to get Amari Cooper inside my top 25. He comes in at wide receiver 29. Lower expectations for Amari Cooper on Sunday.
Yep, 2nd best defense against the pass, Baltimore. They're a little bit weaker against the runs, and I think that Cleveland will want to lean on that as much as possible, even if they don't have a ton of success. Don't really like any Brown in this matchup. Certainly not excited about Deshaun Watson either. So, yeah, I would be, if you can find anyone else to fill that role, I would do so.
Yeah. And a theme of today's love-hate, Jay, has been a lot of Browns and Ravens, and we continue that with Zay Flowers, also on the hate list here. And for Zay Flowers, to me, though, Barry, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just the matchup. There are serious questions about usage right now in this offense as well.
It's all so close to the line of scrimmage. Over the last 4 games, his average up to the target is 6.4 yards. 73% of his targets are under 10 air yards. So it's all this close to the line of scrimmage stuff. And so when you think about throws below 10 yards, these close throws, Browns allow the fewest yards per game. In fact, only 1 game this season has a wide receiver caught more than 5 passes against Cleveland. And we've talked about, we expect positive regression, but the fact is the Ravens have been running the ball so effectively. And you know Mark Andrews is going to get his. If I had to start a Ravens wide receiver, it's Zay Flowers. But I don't feel great about him in this matchup. He's outside my top 30 for the week.
Yeah, I think that, outside of Andrews and Lamar, there's no one you want in this matchup. This Cleveland defense is still the best in the league. Now, Baltimore might take that mantle on Sunday, but until that point, Cleveland have the best passing defense in the league and the 3rd best rushing defense. This is still, and a lot of that's biased by Clayton Tune, to be fair, but still, this is an incredible
Still
defense.
counts.
Our final pass catcher on the hate list, Jacoby Myers on Sunday Night Football against the Jets. It's not just the Jets corner duo or trio, Jay, that they have to worry about here. His target share has gone down since Aiden O'Connell has taken over.
Yeah, it wasn't great the early Aiden O'Connell game against the Chargers as well. Devontae was the guy that he looked for. And against this elite Jets defense, and with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed out there, I think that you want to look elsewhere than Jacoby Myers in your flex.
I love the stat. The Jets have yet to allow 45 or more receiving yards to multiple wide receivers in the same game. So if you're like, there's only one guy that's getting to 45 yards, you feel better about Devontae Adams, who's gotten a much bigger target share from Aiden O'Connell than you do about Jacoby Myers. I get it. He scored a touchdown last week, but that was like on reverse run. It's hard to see Myers doing that again against the Jets. He's just wide receiver 37 for me this week. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.